Westford Conservation Commission meeting for Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, to order or open it or whatever. So the first item on the agenda is open forum. Do any members of the commission have something for open forum? Matt?
Just as a DEP Nero is moving to their Woburn office, so if anybody is watching along at home so filings will now be sent to the Woburn office as opposed to the current Wilmington office, starting Monday, December 19th. Additionally, the flyer is in the final stages of getting wrapped up, but since won't be having a second meeting this month, wanted to share with you the public forum on the MVP tree management plan, and that I know a couple commissioners participated in the first one a couple months back. The second public forum will be held virtually January 19th. It is a Thursday. I think it's at 7 p.m., but I will make sure to include the flyer in the commission's meeting packet for...
We can sign up if we want to?
Yes.
Okay.
For the first January meeting packet. So be on the lookout, but also I can share that when it finally gets distributed.
Thank you.
Do any members of the audience have anything for open forum? Okay, moving on to our other 6:45 p.m. agenda item. It's for the O'Brien Farm Public Footbridge Project, discussing potential changes.
Hi, I'm Dan Stinson. I'm with Sudbury Valley Trustees, working with Matt on this project.
And participating on the phone is Charlie McCullough, trustee of the O'Brien Farm. I think that's, so we wanted to provide an update with the commission, kind of where we are and get some guidance, moving forward. Initially, the last the commission saw this was we had a structural plan designed based upon the lack of geotechnical data. The design engineer, assumes the worst case, and that's why, we believe that there are 15-foot helical piers being provided, which are certainly excessive for, the scope of this bridge. When we went out, we had a public, the RFP was issued or RFP was released. We had a site walk with a couple interested parties back in August, maybe September, sometime in that time frame. And we received some feedback via the questions about, if it was to be designed to these specifications, manual installation of the piers was going to be extremely difficult, and heavy equipment would need to be, brought in to achieve the torque and the loads, necessary. And at that point, and especially with, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this property, the access to kind of a bridge crossing is very much relegated to, foot trail, 3-foot wide foot trails along the top of kind of that esker, and also along the wetlands edge, leading to the footbridge location. So we've kind of come back to, we've reached out to another structural engineering firm whom has designed kind of a footbridge consistent with what the original conceptual plans were, which would utilize manual installation of the auger tipped piers. And we wanted to follow, and we have kind of, hopefully we can have a design prepared that is consistent with kind of the conceptual plan that was utilized and reviewed by the commission during the public hearing process for this order of conditions. And we wanted to, I think I'm probably forgetting something. I gotta go scroll down. And so kind of the other, the secondary kind of concern that was had was, if the design has to be, if the design, we have to use the design from the structural engineer, with the piers and everything that was, provided and included in the plan, the costs of those piers are, due to the welding, welding the brackets onto the top of the piers, in conversation, we've heard, per pier, it was about to be, $2,000 per pier, whereas previously, we were anticipating and budgeting for something, magnitudes less. And so kind of the concern is, while we do have funding through the CPA and the Mass Trails program, we want to make sure that we are utilizing the funds in the most,
So is this a redesign, or
well, I think
or is it still overkill and you want to do something else?
well, no, we haven't gotten the redesign yet.
Okay.
And, but we wanted to.
So this is still the original before us?
Right, this is still the original before us, but I wanted to show that as, why we.
Line.
Right, what we currently have, and, this is going to, as, we've estimated it may be, an 80-foot bridge that is in the vicinity, cost in the vicinity of $80,000.
Wow.
Which, just because we have, and kind of discussing with Margaret.
For a more minimalistic approach?
Well, and that's what we're looking to see, and, kind of get the commission's, guidance on it, not just, one of those, just because we can, doesn't mean we should, and.
We're not gonna redesign any of the structure here, but whatever engineer does, they're gonna make sure it maintains the same estimated.
It's got to have the same integrity.
Right, right.
Exactly.
With the soils that are available.
So who makes that decision?
Well, they can do it for less money, obviously.
I was at Monday morning with a hand dog, with one of the hand auger and one of the kind of soil spades, and I did find what the soil evaluators in the health department have classified as class 2 soils. Again, they're not that familiar with the loading capacities in the wetland resource, particularly because, they're usually doing the soil evaluations for septic systems, which you're not putting a septic system in, in something that, in something which is that, wet, and they would just pass on to it. So yes, I understand that. Jim, I think that's a very good point to hear. Dan, am I missing anything?
Well, so I would say when we budgeted for this project and sent out the grant applications, we had planned for a design that is not like what we're seeing here. It was kind of more along the lines of what we've seen done in comparable projects in other municipalities. That is more aligned with what Matt is describing that he's looking into now. And so one of the questions we had, I think, is if we went back to that design, which I'm hopeful we can, do we need an engineering stamp? And I think Matt has been looking into that this week. So you might be.
Yeah, and so, in terms of the procurement, it was, what's sufficient for the building commissioner, what's, in terms of construction, what's sufficient for procurement, because, if we're going to have to go out to bid for this, how is it to be ultimately
What did you find out?
and what we need for, the building commissioner was was comfortable without a stamped, if it was designed by a structural engineer, even though it's not stamped, and he was in favor of, making sure that all the parts are being utilized in the capacities with which they're designed. These are, it's a comparable deck, it's a deck and dock system, that they're, installing into.
It's not the Golden Gate Bridge, it's 12 inches above the water.
Right, exactly, and so, I think originally when this was prepared, the engineer's first question to me was, what type of vehicles are going across it? I'm like, a couple of people, and, and so I think, and I think even, in this design, he's calculating for, I think, 100
£100 per square foot.
yeah, 100 pounds per square foot, and.
So we could have a party on this thing.
But
So-
there are other footbridges that,
So where do we go from here?
constructed for, 60. So and, again, kind of the second part of it was, what was necessary for procurement. And it was advised by the assistant town manager that, to have everything spelled out in the, have a final plan with which, everybody will be bidding for.
The same thing.
Yeah, and then that alleviates any concerns of, kind of the variability between, oh, well, we're going to do it this way, it's like,
Okay.
this is what we want to have done, this is what.
So do you have a timeline?
I haven't heard back from the second structural engineering firm, he seemed to be seemed to be able to be accommodating, and, I haven't received a proposal back, but.
So we'll go forward with that plan.
Right, I mean, and, hopefully it can be consistent, more consistent with the plan that was,
Originally
that
set.
conceptual plan that was
Yep,
used
yep.
through the kind of.
I'm comfortable with that.
The firm.
I think the only thing we haven't mentioned is, aside from the obvious implications for the budget, we also didn't plan on having heavy machinery in the stream. So we're looking at kind of a light on the land type of approach, and hopefully the approach would be better for that too. Charlie, are we missing anything?
No, your comment on the equipment is right on, because I don't think, a number of people have not seen the site. And as Matt pointed out earlier, it's a real narrow door, if you will, there. It doesn't lend itself to any equipment coming in. You might be able to get a small stand-on Toro type thing, like that, but anything more than that, you have to start cutting down trees and what have you. I think, if I may suggest, the bottom line from where I'm seeing is to try to make this thing work. We originally looked at this and went to CPC and everybody else as a project of $34,371. Keep in mind that was 2 years ago, so things happened. Since then, to engage the engineer that we have, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, that we incurred additional $8,000 to have this plan drawn up. If we add the fees that he's suggesting, according to our consultant, Dick O'Brien, the pile of $200 a piece to $2,000 a piece. So we end up with a combined total of around $74,000. And then you add the cost of materials, that certainly gone up the last 2 years. You're looking at $6,000 to $8,000 per brick. And the question is there funding, is there support for that kind of expense? And is there funding available for it? And just to remind a few people, and now if I have this wrong, correct me, but we've got $25,778 coming from the state. The Conservation Commission went in, if I recall, the CPC requested the full amount, the $34,000, but the understanding that the grant came into the state, it would be less. And the grant did come in, so the $34,000 was $85,993. So I'm looking at it as CPC funds set aside is another $25,000. So we have a kitty, if my math is right, of roughly $60,000 between state and CPC funds. And we got an $80,000 project. If we go with the engineer and the heavy-duty pilot.
Yes, that sounds about right. I don't have the numbers in front of me and don't have it. Those numbers all do sound right, so, if we we do want to pursue, something with, yes.
It seems to me that we should approach it where we look to see if we can get approval for what we originally planned. And only if we have something that stops us, are we then put in a different position. Now, it's always possible, I mean, we're opening up, if you remember, CPC applications again. It's always, I'm sorry, can you hear me, Charlie? Can you hear me?
You need to talk a little bit louder.
So it's always possible to come forward and ask whether it's possible to do something else, but it makes no sense to do anything else till we're absolutely sure that we can't do what we originally planned to do. You know, you say, thank you very much, go back to the original. If everybody gives you your approval, then we're on for that, okay? And then in the worst-case scenario, I sit on CPC, in the worst-case scenario, you could come before us and tell us you have this hardship, and we can see whether or not that's fixable.
Okay.
That's what I would suggest.
That's great. I appreciate hearing that, and that kind of gives the timeline for making sure if the second firm is able to provide a design or framing plan, including having that making sure we can have that by the beginning of January, so that we can
That's correct.
If we do need
That's
to act on
Before we close our,
exactly so we can get on CPC if we need to.
Excuse me, may I just ask one question? I had a little trouble hearing a little bit. Are we saying that we're going to pursue the option to have an engineer plan, the higher price option?
no,
No.
not unless we're forced to.
We're hoping that Matt is going to be able to make progress in getting another engineered plan for the lighter duty option.
And approval from,
And approval from the building.
right. And if everybody says okay, there's no need to do
Yeah.
the
Good,
other.
all right, I'm with you.
Yeah, so at this point, we're kind of taking a step back and said, can we use a different engineer to find a way to build the bridge?
That we originally suggested,
Yes, and.
and would it be passed by the building department?
Yep,
And if all of that flows, then it is a non-issue.
Right.
If it doesn't flow, then we address what we have to do.
yeah, then
But
we
we do
figure out
have a
our plan B.
timeline. You have a January timeline for
Yep.
CPC funds.
Right,
Yeah.
and I can follow up with again, I talked to them this afternoon and sent the email, hadn't heard back, so I can certainly follow up with them and kind of let them know.
Yeah, that would be
know our
fine.
timeline, and if something is available and, is pursuable, let's, I want to make sure, if I need to pull together a CPC application,
Right,
let's
but
do
that's a
that.
last,
But that's a last
resort,
resort.
but I'm just saying the door's not necessarily closed. I only speak, as vice chair, but I'm only one person,
I think that's good for a tight timeline because we're also under the state grant is, we have to use the money by the end of December. And so we need to
So we
get
have
this out to
to,
bid.
so we have every reason to make this an emergency,
quick.
like everybody has to respond right away. That should be in your letter too, so that
Yes.
people know that we don't lose those fundings if they're late in responding.
Yep. Sorry.
Is there anything else you need?
Nope, I think that was everything. I appreciate the commission's work on that. Dan
Very
and
much.
Charlie, I appreciate your attendance as well.
Happy holiday.
Thank you all, appreciate you allowing me.
Yep, happy holiday.
Bye, Charlie, I'll be in touch.
Okay, moving on to our 7 PM agenda item, Stony Brook Conservation Area, an Eagle Scout project to install a waste disposal system. Hi.
So I'm Connor. I believe you have the pamphlet that I made.
Yes. So, it's like this.
A basic explanation of my project is I'd like to put a waste receptacle system on one of the beaches in the conservation land. Specifically, so there are 3 beaches, 2 on one side of the lake, 1 on, I guess you could call it the southern part of the lake, which is most utilized by hikers based on the path they go through. And I've noticed over the years, and it changes depending on the year, there can be a lot of trash on those trails. It depends on what time of year you're in there, but a lot of people use those trails that are not part of the camps. Specifically, there's a lot of cans and a lot of wrappers that I find. And the areas around the camps are generally pretty clean, but the other half of the reservation or the conservation land isn't. So I was thinking about making something a bit like that. It's subject to change. I've already gotten suggestions to put the opening on the front so that the barrels can be slid out, which would allow me to make a slant at the top to let rain roll off. But it should stay generally the same size. You'd have separation of trash like wrappers and plastic from cans, so those could be turned in however that works. But it should be pretty light. It could be picked up and moved if necessary. It's gonna have gloves in it so that people that are walking dogs or hiking around the area can be able to pick stuff up. Because I know a lot of people like using that land and they'd like to keep it clean, but it's not all that easy to do. During the off season when it can't be maintained, I was thinking you could just put a lock on it, and it should be able to just sit there and it'll be all weatherproof and stuff. Animals won't be able to get into it, but it just provides an easier way for people to keep the area clean so that everyone can enjoy it. It'll take a long time to fill up, so you only have to check it occasionally, the person that works that area. But overall, it's not all that expensive to maintain either. The bags are pretty cheap. I'd provide the initial ones, which would probably last at least a year, maybe several. But it should be able to help hikers at least keep the area nicer than it is.
Do you have any idea the cost of this?
So I'd be raising all the money. It's not all that expensive. It just depends on lumber, especially with COVID. The prices have been changing, but they're only going down recently. So the cost will decrease, hopefully. But overall, not that much. A few $100s, maybe.
330 to 430, you said.
Okay, Jim?
The philosophy on this property has been carry in, carry out.
Yeah. So.
For the organized camping activities, and they have their own dumpsters, and they pay for removal and disposal of that trash. Now, your suggestion that it not be carry in, carry out, and
So,
it be sorted by recycling separate from trash?
So I think carry in and carry out is great. This actually started, I had to do research on littering, and I found almost all of the statistics point to people don't carry in, carry out when given a chance to or when told to. There's a lot of data behind it, but when given the opportunity to help the community, when like somebody presents an opportunity for them to help clean up, they generally will. People want to help out, but just picking up stuff and be thrown aside is not something that people are willing to do unless like presented the opportunity in front of their face. Especially like I've just seen a lot of the trash walking around. It's always there.
The trail to the beach, the one you described, is probably the most problematic area, because it's the closest to the parking, and in the summertime, the first hot weekend of summer, the beach gets crowded with people drinking, barbecuing, all against the rules that are there already. So in the last year, we have increased the police presence on the property, and had them go up there every warm weekend. Matt's been reminding the police department, get the bicycle police up there, or the cops can walk in. And that's where the trash is coming from, the people that are using the beach. And we put barrels there, the barrels will be filled up, and there'll be a giant pile around them within an hour. I really think we ought to stick with the carry in, carry out philosophy. But anyway, my opinion.
Why couldn't we do this on a trial, see if it both works? It's not expensive, I mean, it's his time.
Yeah.
And so this was something, I did pose this in kind of my question, and Connor was able to, kind of where they're located, how many of them, and even incorporated, barrels being slid out, kind of the pamphlet does say lifting them out and, and especially at a 44-inch high container or 52-inch high total height, lifting something out of that's going to be, certainly, a 35-gallon trash can get heavy. And again, with the Westford Land Preservation Foundation as CR grantee, want to make sure that they're certainly supportive of this. But, kind of my last point, that I included in kind of like email back about, the dumpsters are only picked up during the camp season, and even the, the facility coordinator, we utilize him to, make sure that the renters are being, to enforce the rules, to, especially on those hot summer weekends, he, makes a roundup. In addition to, I'm not sure this is the best place for this. I don't know, especially, if there would be school locations, to, where kind of those dog waste disposal, receptacles are, because, in speaking with the facilities director, the schools are already a place where, grounds, crew are, there are already staff who monitor, the trash cans, the existing trash cans, and, kind of maybe redirecting it to, those types of dog waste specific disposal sections, may be beneficial, because then that diverts those from the trash can, from the existing trash cans, and so they're not, it's getting separated. Again, I don't know, I want to just kind of get the commission's thoughts. And
Jim?
I think that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that, but there is a dog park task force in town, a group of citizen volunteers that are trying to isolate, locate, and get control of a small piece of property that they can use for a dog park. And they would use, this would probably be oversized. It would have to be shrunk down and maybe put 2 or 3 of them within the dog park area. But that would be a great way to collect the dog waste. I use the park over in Chelmsford on Richardson Road, and they've got commercially bought trash disposal items. But a small version of this would probably work well. They don't have a location now, but it's possible we could build a prototype, or maybe 1 or 2 for them, and they could store them until they find a place suitable for the dog park. Then they could implement them, as you're planning here.
Right, so
Something like that would work nice.
So that wouldn't stop you from doing what
Right.
you want to do.
Exactly.
But wouldn't apparently conflict with what you're suggesting.
Yeah.
Well,
Be a different location.
But
And a different purpose.
Right.
But it also sounds, because Stony Brook, there's waste pickup, and we have the active caretaking for only a limited number of months. If it's at the dog park, then it's going to be utilized year-round.
Yeah.
Could you give them the connection?
yeah, I can certainly make the connection.
Do you have a question?
yeah, who would be the beneficiary if I were to use the application instead?
It'd still be the town.
It would be the town.
It's it would be a town-owned property, but this group of citizens, I think there's probably 10 of them or something working on.
Maybe a
this
little
project.
less.
They're trying to find out an appropriate site. Most recently, they looked at, off of Carlisle Road down by Jack Walsh Field, the soccer field.
Yeah, I can certainly,
In that vicinity.
connect you with the facilities director, make an introduction. And also kind of, run this by, the town manager's office to kind of get direction as to, make sure I understand, you're asking why, whom the beneficiary is, somebody needs to be signing the document, at the end of the day. So I understand why you're asking that. But we can certainly.
He has a time limit too.
Right, well, that's-
So that we would want to accommodate
This wouldn't
that
slow them
same
down at all,
time.
right? This wouldn't slow them down.
No, it wouldn't,
This would-
as long as somebody was willing to accept that for whenever. Because this poor committee has been working for, 7
They've
years?
been working for a while.
A long time to get it, dog park.
But these don't
That
have to
wouldn't
be
affect
installed
you.
on the day that they're built. They can be handed over to them.
I understood,
To be
understood.
used when they get their site built.
Why don't we give them that connection? And if
Yep,
that
I'll-
doesn't work, maybe we can talk about this again.
I can send that email tomorrow and make the introductions and kind of help move along.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Okay, moving on to our 7:10 PM agenda item, we have a public hearing for Perkins, Balsam Circle.
Under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and Westford's non-zoning wetlands bylaw, Chapter 171, the Westford Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 14th, 2022, at 7:10 p.m. in Meeting Room 201 at Town Hall, 55 Main Street, to consider the request for determination of applicability application of Chris Perkins for the removal of 9 trees within 100 feet of bordering vegetated wetlands at Balsam Circle.
Hi, Chris Perkins. I current resident at the new Sky Clark development off of Carlisle Road. Here to talk about the tree project you just described. First, I want to say thank you to Matt. He was awesome. He came out to the site. He and Joe Grinewitz, and they helped me go through the entire process and get to this. Thank you very much. And in the process of thinking about this meeting, I realized I corresponded with Matt last year when I sent you a picture of the tree that fell on the boathouse over at the conservation property. That was me. Just let you know.
Was that Slifer?
No, at East Boston Camps.
Stony Brook. Stony Brook, it fell right on the
Center to.
top of the building. I just asked him if he knew about it. He said he had. He took care of it since, so good job. But, moving on. The package was very self-explanatory. Took a lot of pictures for those of you who haven't been on the site lately, to give you some idea of what we're talking about. So I'm not going to carry all of that back to you, but I want to talk about 2 or 3 things. One is kind of explaining how we got to this point. Second would be why I think we are requesting a finding of non-adverse impact to the wetland. And then final would be the questioning part, which I think is the most important part of this meeting, gives you a chance to ask questions that concern you. So, the project simply started as 2 neighbors got together, looked at the trees that were hanging over their house and leaning into them, and domineering over the top of them, decided that although the board has approved the project, there are insufficient HOA funds because of the newness of the site to be able to take on a project of this magnitude. So the 2 neighbors said, well, we can't wait. This is really of concern to us. We're willing to pay out of our own pocket to make this happen. When that word got out to the site, we found out we weren't the only ones that had concern. I now stand here and I represent 11 of the 17 single units on site who combined are concerned about the trees into one project because Marquee Tree Service is going to cut us a break because of the fact that they offer a full day rate and the scope of the project is big enough now. We think that we can benefit from that. So that's how we got here. When we notified abutters, I just want to let you know I talked to 3 individuals who were abutters. The first one was our neighbor to the east, which is the owner of the
And you got this so you can put this up and then you can use the laser pointer and point to.
The orange button in the middle.
Right there.
Okay. Which one's the pointer? I'm sorry. The middle?
Yeah, the orange one.
There you go. So
Oh.
which house is you? Which are your abutting neighbors?
Okay, I'm number 9. For some reason, right there, that's 9. And my neighbor here at 7. Those were the 2 originally that started. The people I've talked to is the veterinary clinic here. She has no concerns about the project once she saw all the trees were up here on the westerly side of the site. Second person I talked to was Mac Industries over here, and they supported the project as well. In fact, asked us if we would take down more trees because of their concern of some of the ones between us that they're worried about on their side. The final person I talked to regarding the project was Rob Anstill from Perkins and Anstill, who is the trustee for this westerly strip of land that goes all along our western boundary. And he was a supporter of the project as well, so he had no concerns over it. And he actually suggested we get in front of the Conservation Commission, which is another reason why we're here. So that's kind of how we got here. terms of why I would like to talk about a possibility of a request for non-adverse impact of the wetlands, as you, it'll go away. It'll go away. Okay. So, as you can see, all of these trees, I in the blue boundary, basically, if you drew a line right through all the trees we're talking about, that is the 100-foot offset from the wetlands. And Matt came out, helped me measure off some of the still marked flagged areas of the wetland to the trees. Some of them were inside the property, not all of them, so just the ones right along probably these few units. Others are outside, and we actually already have planning board approval for the ones that aren't in the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction.
So all the ones, these lower ones are outside of our jurisdiction.
Yes.
So the only ones that are in our jurisdiction are those ones
In the blue?
in the blue.
This is the property, about 100-foot line.
So I count 7, not 9 then.
You know what, when Matt and I were out on site, we didn't measure every single tree, but in my package I said up to 8, so I feel that up to 8 of them may be inside, barely inside, the 100-foot demarcation point off of the wetland.
You understand how this situation
I
got
do.
to where it is with the builder. It started with the builder.
I do, and
Builder did
I
not-
appreciate how difficult it's been for
The
everybody.
builder didn't come.
Let him
before-
finish. Go ahead, Jim.
The builder didn't come before the Conservation Commission because they didn't have to, because they were building everything outside the 100-foot buffer where we have jurisdiction.
Yes.
Right.
So what they did instead is built the houses right up against the 60 to 80-year-old mature pine trees.
I live in the problem,
Right up
yes.
against- And these trees were there when
You
you
bought the
when you
problem. You went in there as somebody to purchase property. Those trees were pre-existing, those homes were there. You saw that, and we see that all the time, and it's like, you're coming in and seeking relief and saying, hey, there's this, as you would maybe put it, a safety issue. But that safety issue existed before you purchased that, and now you purchased that, and now you're saying, now I have issue. That's what we take exception with.
Okay, well, the reason I'm here tonight is to explore that and to see if you would be willing to consider this project. And obviously, you have considered it, and...
Yeah, I'm having a tough time with it, because, if it came before us and we had some say into how this was built, this wouldn't be before us.
Right.
You're not the first homeowner or homeowners who have come to us and say, hey, we just, we wanted to purchase in Westford, we didn't like this or that, but they come to us seeking relief after the fact. And I just see this as another project coming, seeking relief to us after the fact, and it really upsets me that we didn't have a say in this in the first place.
Right, never went to conservation because everything was outside of 100 feet. The buildings were 10 or 15 feet inside the boundary, which is probably the closest they could build them to the edge. So they built them right up underneath the trees, and now you guys are living with the problem that you bought a couple of years
There's
ago.
a lot of anxiety on site, that's correct.
Is there any way to put anything low bush, or?
Well, I'm not going there yet, let's,
I know.
I
may not
know,
be on the
because
same-
I'm
but I
just
may not be
Finish
on the
why
same
I
page.
think that there's minimal impact of the wetland. First of all, the trees are going to be removed by a professional company, Marquee Tree. They're going to put a crane on the hardtop, go over the houses, remove them that way. So there won't be any heavy machinery anywhere near the wetland or the border. The second issue is that the stumps will be left completely in place. So there'll be no soil disturbed anywhere near those trees. And in fact, I guess you guys are familiar with the term snags
Yeah.
as a positive benefit. Well, even those stumps there, I thought would be okay.
well, a stump is different than a snag. A snag is like, if you left like, what did they call it, a butt log?
Standing log, yeah.
That it stands, that you don't stump it, that you leave it up maybe 10 or 15 feet up from the base, but, cut the top.
If it's acceptable and we can possibly work that in, we could work that in.
maybe doing something like that as well as planting?
Well, I mean, I got a couple of points, and then I'll let you guys, and I'll ask.
You know, when you say there's just, typically, when we talk about large mature trees like this, it's not only how you're going to take it out, it's also shading, and the shading that trees provide to buffers and wetlands. And when you take down large mature trees, you open it up to evasives, and you change the characteristics of the light that get into those areas, and you actually change the dynamics of the buffer and the wetland. So what you're saying is, okay, you know, I'm going to put a guy out here, and he's going to pop these out, so I'm not going to have a machine in here. I'm like, I get that. And, you know, we're going to cut these as stumps, and, you know, we're not, and I get that. And then we're talking about something else that we could do, but still, when you cut that down and you change that shading relationship, I mean, that was one of our pet peeves with Bill all the time, because it really does change the dynamic.
I actually consider that a positive, because these trees are so domineering. There's no sunlight getting to the species
But that's
below.
but that's the way this is. So you are changing it. Now, you might say it's a change for the better. You know,
That's what
others
I was
may disagree and say that is more of, you know, it's a change. And our charge is to make sure that, you know, we're not allowing cumulative adverse impacts. So while you see the impact here is maybe being somewhat negligible, you know, it happening everywhere in town, or has that cumulative adverse impact to wetlands and buffer zones in the interest that we try to protect.
And you look at the habitat that these tall pines provide for owls, hawks, turkeys, this is part of the ecosystem, and the more we lose of it, the less diverse our habitat is.
And that shade provides a whole ecosystem under there too as well.
There's almost nothing growing is so dominant, and there's so many other species that are
Like,
trying to
you
get
know,
through,
bugs
and they just can't
larvae
make it.
and all that.
Yeah, there's still an ecosystem there.
Matt, you went out there, right?
Finally, the last couple of points I'm trying to make are, it's a perfect time of year, the ground's going to be frozen. And the second point is, as a result of the drought we've had, that wetland is dried up, and it would be a perfect time to also do what we're proposing to do.
Your question, you asked
No, I
if...
asked, you went out there?
Yes, I went out, you know, originally, you know, when kind of this was initially discussed before Thanksgiving, you know.
You see a combination of anything that could be done, if we can't relieve all of it?
I mean, they're all, you know, right at that extent of, you know.
Yeah, they built those decks right back up into them, you know, and we've had this discussion before, that, you know, we need to take this into account. And unfortunately, we couldn't here. We didn't even, you know, get a chance to have our say or try to, you know, come up with a plan that, you know, would allow the developer to build, but at the same time be protective of, you know, the trees and the buffer and the resource area. So personally, you know, I'm certainly not in favor. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Is there something that we can do? I mean, at a minimum, I would say, you know,
What about a
you would have to leave
combination?
those butt logs, keep them up high.
What about a combination of things?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Maybe not
That
all
and
the
plantings,
trees,
maybe.
maybe just some of the trees, maybe
Yeah,
not
I'm
all of them.
thinking of a
and that
combination.
way,
We may
yeah.
not be able to accommodate all
Well,
of
they're
them.
saying that every one of these
I
that
heard
somebody
you.
is having an issue with because they're
heard
right
you.
up against.
But again, looking at it as with a combination of perhaps some things to alleviate some, maybe not all.
I know one thing that happens is when you start cutting down a number of them, it exposes the ones that are left, and it's, let's say you have a number of trees like this all together. In some respect, they all support one another because they're so close. But once you start taking them out and individual trees are left, they're much more susceptible to wind damage and coming down because they don't have the support of the other ones around them.
And they're all connected by the root system.
Yeah. But even that, when they're all blowing around and, you know, they're all kind of holding themselves up. But when you take that out, it gives those ones that are
It's
left
even
more
more
chance
dangerous.
to move around and ultimately snap or break.
Noel?
How old are these trees? These 7 or 9 trees?
some of them are, I can't get my hands around.
Older than you and me.
How old is the project?
Pictures that look like 60,
The
80
project,
years.
I moved in June, a year and a half ago,
Okay.
and I was like the fourth person to move in.
I think this got approval from the zoning board of appeals and the planning board right when I started in 2019, early 2020 was when it initially was approved.
Yeah, this is not an old subdivision. This is new.
Yeah.
Another question, did insurance say anything about this when you're building?
No.
'Cause when
We
I
do
moved to a
have
house,
site
it was-
insurance, so if
I
a
moved
tree
to-
was to fall on the house, theoretically, insurance would cover it. But in the meantime, you know how long it takes to get a contractor to button up the house, fix what's there. You probably have to move out. It'd be better to avoid that situation.
Well, when I moved to a house and there were trees close by, insurance said they wouldn't insure it until we took them down. So.
I'm not
I've had
aware.
trees fall, and an insurer will not remove a tree proactively. If it falls on a house, they'll take care of the damage. If it falls on your property, you own it, and you take care of it.
I mean, if it misses your house, you take care of it. If it falls on the house.
They take care of it.
Okay.
But if you come to them and say, hey, I've got a tree, it's leaning, will you guys cover it? No. If you think that, it's an issue, they won't come and proactively remove it for you.
The insurance won't.
The insurance won't.
Okay, because I know one of the things that we have done in cases with older homes, when we've had this request 20, 30, 40 years after the house was built, a lot of times what we're looking for is trees that have obvious evidence of severe disease, which creates an, the fact that the tree is tall, the fact that it's maybe leaning a little bit does not necessarily mean it's going to fall over. It's when it becomes
It's not a healthy
diseased.
tree anymore.
When it's no longer healthy, that's
There
when
was
it becomes-
evidence, a couple of them like that. In fact, one of those trees got hit by lightning, and it split from the top all the way to the roots.
Have you had arborists look at these trees to
No.
determine which ones are healthy?
We've had arborists come in and look at the trees and make a recommendation for the removal in the past. And, they were pretty specific as to the reasons that they needed to be removed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say that, log them, cut them off, leave them up to leave, environmental benefit and, planting of other tree.
Yeah.
If this line of trees are cut, what's 10 feet beyond them? Another tree? Because it's going to lean toward the
Yeah.
light also.
Yeah.
Right, but we're not worried about those. We're worried about the ones that are already leaning, and honestly, we would take our chances with those, it sounds like, because,
Those are going to stay.
yeah.
So maybe we get an arborist in there to see
Yeah.
their opinion of it. Maybe we can do a site visit.
Yeah, I
so
hate to
we can
remove
actually see
healthy,
what's
large,
going
mature
on.
trees
You
like
have to
that.
identify which trees also, because some of these are not within our jurisdiction.
And they might come up with a suggestion as to where you could cut them, not the whole, like a combination, which is what I was looking for.
Can I ask how we would prove to ourselves that one tree is or isn't in? Is that Matt?
I mean,
No?
yeah, I'll just I'll pull tape. The flags are still in the wetland.
Trees are marked.
And, I mean, when I put, I think we came to, when I pulled tape, I thought I was looking at the nearest tree, on the property that was marked by marquee, and that was about 85 feet from the wetland resource, and that was the nearest one. So, there's some certainly, again, kind of in that area of, that first row of trees that weren't, included or were, protected by the erosion controls and,
That might be a way
beyond the
to-
limit of work.
Right, no, I'm looking for your help because
Well,
I want to try to solve the problem and I need it.
and one of the things that we do when we allow a seriously compromised tree to be removed is we also require replacement trees to be planted, and the recommendation would be go with something that's not going to get that tall. So you still are getting that habitat value, the protection of the wetlands.
Without
Yeah,
destroying
usually
the house.
it has to be indigenous.
Yeah, a native species.
Yeah.
Yeah. But-
Clearly something short that's gonna grow to a shorter height.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and Matt did forward us a website that had some suggestions for that.
Yep.
I honestly thought that if the top of these trees wasn't there, what's there would take off and flourish naturally, because it's already in place, it just needs a chance.
I mean, the stumps that you're gonna leave,
Oh, no, you're talking about the
Saplings
other,
underneath.
The undergrowth.
Undergrowth.
what's going behind it or below it?
There are birch trees, there are maple trees, there are oak trees, there are all manner of shorter bushy species.
An arborist would look at the whole picture.
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
Yeah,
help
we
you-
would
and
still-
help- And help you
So
with that.
We would still
We
have
would-
him plant trees.
yeah.
You know, and if they weren't there, they'd be going somewhere else, but that's just what we do.
And
But you
one
would
of
have
the,
professional help.
one of the reasons that we do that is because what you're talking about, the birch, the maples, those are all volunteers. When you get into, oh, we're gonna plant a replacement tree, then an arborist is looking at what's a good tree to plant, where's a good place to locate it so that it will thrive? Because you get a lot of these volunteers, the birches, et cetera, they may be so crowded with each other that they may not do well.
They die out.
Yeah, so it's just, it's a more thoughtful approach to planting something that's going to be providing value in the
But
future.
typically, we try to have the new trees planted in proximity to where the
Yeah.
old ones were removed.
Okay.
But so what I'm thinking is you plant something where it's not near a lot of those other volunteers, so it's not going to be competing for resources.
Where do we go from here?
Thank you, beat me to it. So my suggestion to the commission was, if it was amenable to continue it to the first January meeting on the 11th, and in that time frame have an arborist assess,
Can you supply him with a name? Can you give him a name?
I can't, I've tried not to, direct people
Yeah,
one
you
way or
can't
the
do
other.
that. Yeah, that is
But
like,
there certainly are,
They're out there.
they're
Yeah.
available, there are. and
Delineate
people-
the wetland line in
Right,
that
and
time
I'd be more than happy to go out there, find where the, move
Okay.
the tape, in accordance with the line, with the flagging, so that, come January 11th, we have, an assessment by an arborist and, kind of
Recommendations and-
recommendations, and if that's,
Homeowners issues as well.
Jim?
right, just to kind of summarize some of the things that have to happen. We gotta delineate where the 100-foot buffer actually goes to. Mark which trees you're requesting to be cut. Then
That are within our jurisdiction.
Right, right. If they're marked within the buffer, then we know if they're
Yeah.
gonna be cut. An arborist report that would indicate the health, the status of the trees, where he would recommend to cut them, if there's any diseases, that kind of thing. And then any potential for replacement, what species and what locations would recommend putting them in. Okay.
That's-
That sounds pretty good.
And you want to mention about the butt log?
Right, that's in the
That
arborist
would be-
report.
But that's the arborist report, yeah. If he found something that was so rotted in the bottom, then you couldn't
Right.
leave it, but, if it was something higher up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if anybody wants any food, that's food
Yes,
as well
please.
on the
Yeah.
table. Don't feel uncomfortable. We don't need it all.
So can I have a motion to continue the public hearing to January 11th, 2023?
So we're
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Happy holiday.
Yep. Okay, moving on to our 7:15 PM agenda item, Friends of Forge Pond and the Westford Healthy Lakes and Ponds Collaborative, minor modification request for the Forge Pond Outlet Channel project.
I had some cookies, they're very good, thank you.
For the record, you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Dave Barr. I'm with Friends of Forge Pond. Fire calls with Friends of Forge Pond.
Okay.
So we were here last time, and we had planned to look for a closing out orders of conditions. But just before we came, we went and we're looking at the channel, which is a lot lower than it was last year when we when it was excavated, and we realized there were some areas that were just downstream of where it was excavated, which is now quite a bit shallower. So we were asking if it would be possible to manually create a narrow channel through that, just down to the same level that we were excavating in February, and see if that would open up, and if it would stay open, if it would, I mean, we believe it will help the drawdown, because that's a bottleneck right now.
Okay, yeah, and we had asked you to,
Mention that.
Yeah, we
you had described it, and we had asked you to put it in writing.
Yeah, you asked for a specific document, so we provided that.
Okay. Members of the commission have any questions on it?
It's in agreement with what you'd requested in the last meeting, so it looked fine by me.
Yeah, no, it just follows with the discussion that we had.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing I'm concerned here, this is a tremendous labor effort.
Yeah.
It really is. That's an awful lot of heavy, wet soil that you're going to dig out there manually.
So I calculated again tonight before I came, it's not 5 yards, it's 4 yards.
That's a lot of yards. That's a lot of cubic yards.
If they choose to, we're not letting them do it with, any type of equipment really other than shovels, so.
What you wrote up is
Shovels.
exactly what you requested last time.
Yeah, so we'll see how well it works to be able to do that. We'll see how well it stays. This will be kind of a indicator of, do we need to do something kind of periodically to keep it, I mean, all those things. And like you say, is it manageable?
Yeah.
So if you dug it, is there any way you could put any like a riprap or something that would keep it, more channelized? I mean, if it keeps on filling in, I'm just.
I think that's.
bet.
I think that expands the scope beyond.
Okay,
and,
I just didn't-
And that was something that was discussed with the contractor on site.
Okay.
Based upon experiences out in Beverly. With tidal flow. Or from tidal flow.
A benthic mat?
It's going to move.
I mean,
That'll go.
So,
I think we sort of the hope is once we get the water channeled to that one area, we'll get some volume and
The flow's
speed
gonna
through
keep
there
it open,
that'll
hopefully.
help keep it
Okay.
open. That's,
Okay.
I'm willing to, I'm just,
So this is another pilot.
okay.
exactly,
They're gonna do exactly what they said they came in last time, they said they wanted to do, now they've articulated, and they brought us a documentation, so I say let them have at it.
Likewise, yeah.
Do you have any comments or questions from members of the audience? Okay, no more questions from the commission, so I guess motion to approve the minor modification request
As described in there.
is described in the
Vision.
document.
A letter or whatever it was.
Yeah, the submittal.
So moved.
second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving on to our second part of the agenda item,
Which is to increase the total area of annual benthic
minor
area.
modification request to increase the total area coverage for the annual benthic mats.
Right. So, we were also here for this last time. We presented you with both an overall report on how the pilot project went for the summer, as well as individual reports of kind of incrementally what happened at each site. And 6 of the 7 participants really felt like it would meet their needs more fully between being able to have some open area for swimming and being able to get boats in and out without getting tangled up in weeds, to have a bit bigger area. And the suggested area was 2,000 square feet, which would be, it was one place would be 40 by 50. The other kind of thing that came up as we were putting together the report was that there was apparently during the summer some uncertainty about whether, the 600 applied to the mats, and they could, the notice of intent said the mats could be 600 square feet and they could be moved. And some people thought, oh, it could only be moved to within 600 square feet, and others thought, no, they're 600 square feet and they could be moved. So this proposed request, this change would be specific. You could put down up to 2,000 square foot mat, or you could put smaller ones and move them around, but overall, you couldn't be covering more than 2,000 square feet at a site for the season.
Is it feasible to put down and pull up a 2,000 square foot mat?
Probably not. That's pretty big.
Could be multiple sections.
Yeah, but it's just,
But he's also talking, he's saying smaller mass, but it's also, somebody could try to do that.
yeah, and I'm just kind of do we really,
I mean, you could.
I'm fine
So
with,
it depends on the site. If it's not all that deep, yes, you could put down a mat that's
40 by 50.
Right,
Uh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I did my 10 by 40, it's only 400 square feet, but I did it all by myself.
Okay.
And, so we have several people involved in the larger mat pulling, I can see it being done.
Members of the commission have any questions?
I had a comment about it. There was a Healthy Lakes and Ponds collaborative at the Nabnasset Country Club last year. And they,
Before,
year before?
yeah.
And there's 6 ponds in town, and only 2 of those ponds are not in poor condition right now. And the only 2 that are not in poor condition are the ponds where there are no homes and no boats and are surrounded by conservation land, which would make sense that they're healthier. And I see these ideas as a Band-Aid to the real problem, and maybe look at making more of a drastic change, like the guy who, Pond Solutions, I think it was, who did this presentation. He had suggested waiting until the treatments to put boats in, or to use boats, because when you're using the boats and the propellers are spinning, that causes all the leaves to go all over the place, and that causes everything to spread. So maybe trying something, and he joked about it, he's like, maybe people don't use their boats until the treatments are done. So maybe looking into, I don't know, having the community say, all right, we're gonna not use our boats.
I understand your point, and Dave, I know you're going to get to this. So Forge Pond isn't managed. There are no other management techniques for the invasive vegetation or even excessive native vegetation in Forge Pond beyond the annual winter drawdown and kind of the benthic.
So there's no treatments.
There's no treatments at Forge Pond. Additionally, the milfoil and fanwort, which are present in Forge Pond, not present in the other water body, or most of the other water bodies in town, except for Graniteville, is not, grows and comes to full maturity in July and August. And I understand your point. I'm not telling them they can't not put their boats in and use them
I'm
in
just saying,
July and August.
Morally, to do,
Just trying to find more of a solution to the problem than,
like a long-term.
mask the problem,
Yeah, so-
Maybe taking a season off from using boats,
It's more than just the
pretty
boats.
dramatic,
I mean, it's just the
but-
people's, the properties on the shoreline, this things, fertilizers and all this stuff that just contributes
So
to.
there.
all that
this
is a
lake-
problem too, as well. That
This lake
shouldn't
has
be-
farms on one side, which I believe has fertilizers that run into the lake and provide more nutrients than the other lakes have. The areas where the invasive plants are growing are shallow enough that the boats don't go in those areas. So the boats aren't churning up the plants because they are along the shore, and the boats, that's not where the boats are going. It's more shallow than the boats.
I know, it's very expensive.
Boats are just one of the.
You thought about
Yeah,
doing,
we are also
hand-
thinking of different, for instance, Littleton Clean Lakes Committee, which we're also involved with, tried a pilot project this year with eco harvesting on Spectacle Pond, which is a bit different than hydro raking. Hydro raking scrapes the bottom, and
They hand pick it.
there are places on the Lake Forge Pond that do that.
So you call
But
it
that-
eco harvesting, is it? I didn't.
So the,
Hand picking.
in some places on Forge Pond, there's a process called hydro raking, which is a backhoe that scrapes on the bottom and pulls up plants and a bunch of other, anything that's down there and dumps it on the shore, which we believe is problematic for a number of reasons, including the fact that it fragments and then goes elsewhere.
Get as much out.
But the eco harvesting that was tried on Speckle Pond doesn't go down to the bottom and scrape the bottom. It has a ramp that goes into the water and like a conveyor belt, pulls up the plants, puts it onto the barge. It's taken over to the shore and put in a trailer and taken away, so it's all removed. And so that was tried in Spectacle Pond this year, and we're very, we went and watched while they were doing it. We went back and looked again halfway through the summer afterward to see, how is it coming back. We're going to be going back again several times next year. If that seems to work well there, we'd be interested in trying it for fanwort and the milfoil on Forge Pond too, as another way to, because even with the drawdown, there are areas where it doesn't expose the lake bed where there are invasive plants. So there are some areas where it's not going to do the job, and the eco harvesting could go in those areas, and we can try it there and see how that works there.
Is that very expensive?
It's not cheap, but I think it's comparable to the chemical treatments.
Okay.
For the amount of area that's
Not as much as going down with a scuba diver and hand.
No, you're right. No, it's pretty comparable to the chemical treatments. And, I mean, Spectacle Pond, every other year, has used the chemical treatments. We don't use them in Forge Pond, but they have. And this year, the budget for the chemical treatments went for the eco harvesting. To see how that works.
It'll be interesting to see how that worked out.
Yeah, we are too, yeah.
So back to the Ventic mats, are they going to be the plastic or polyvinyl chloride type stuff instead of the burlap?
So they're both. So
Still going to continue with that burlap, right?
the people that use the burlap found they liked those. Those sites are all in Littleton. The sites in Westford were all commercial polypropylene or polyethylene.
Okay. About that part, you did tell us that last time.
Yeah.
But are you specific saying you don't want the burlap in the Westford sites?
I'd rather not.
Yeah.
Because you're worried about it's going to break up.
It's just going to break up and create more soil for the plants to grow in.
Okay.
So you just put layer upon layer
Yes,
upon layer upon layer. upon
it is a bit
layer.
more material to decompose.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Yeah, nothing we can do about it, then, not hard time.
Well, it'll also be interesting because if at some point we want to look to expand this to other people, is that going to be a limit? We're going to have to say, no, you can't use the burlap.
Your pilot project, if it's okay with Littleton, good for that, and then we can compare and see how it goes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And they were particularly interested in, does it break up? And if it breaks up, they were going to shut that down. And there was no evidence, at least after the first year.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, any comments or questions from members of the audience on this request? So,
I move we authorize the increase in total area to the information in their packet.
It's
To
described as
2,000
submittal.
square feet.
And the use of, not the use of burlap in the Westford pilot project sites.
And to be removed every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
We'll let you know how the digging goes. We've got our waiters.
Okay, now let's move on to our 7:20 PM agenda item, which is the New England Power Company, discussion of 2022 project and compliance with order of conditions.
Good evening. My name is Alex Parra. I'm an attorney with Jones Team Living Parra and Network. We're representing the Hilda Phelps Condominium Association.
And I'm Paul Gapery, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees at Hildreth Hills and live at 76 Barkhurst.
So, I had a correspondence with Matt. I called him at the beginning of the week as he had kindly responded to Gabriel's inquiries. And I also went and visited the site last week. I don't know, do you have the ability to pull up street area? Do you notice the impact now? Okay. Well, so this concerns a large notice of intent concerning many different properties. The notice of intent was actually not.
Sorry, I thought you meant of the actual notice.
Right, the words.
So, in this particular instance, the notice of intent, the order of conditions authorized, can you operate the...
Yep. So I can give you a kind of a, this is our wastewater treatment plant. The access is off of Parkhurst and Hildreth. There's a path that gets us out this way to our leach field, which is in this area here. This path was marked on the notice of intent on this line here with a note saying to be for future real estate review. And that line continues down to here into the next page, 31 or 32, where it transitions to a different look, and that's where they had planned to put a timber road. At the time that they did the notice of intent, it was not determined whether this path would be the one that National Grid would use. That wasn't decided until July.
So, there are other issues in that, and I don't want to take up the commission's time. And we do have some property rights issues that we need to work through with National Grid, and that's not the commission's purview. But when you look at these notice of intent plans and delineation, as you leave the sewage treatment plant, it goes down according to their delineation outside the buffer zone, and then crosses through the buffer zone and across the wetland. The plan doesn't identify the nature of the wetland. To me, it looks like an intermittent stream. And the crossing there, I believe, was in existence prior to the notice of intent. And because it's used, amongst other things, to service, to inspect and service the leach field. And I sent Matt some photographs along with an email on Monday. As you come down that road, it's a dirt road. It's, okay, so that the picture on the right is as you come down that road, dirt road, to the first crossing. You can see it's heavily rutted, muddy, unstable. And the erosion controls which were put in actually after they put in the timber road. The erosion controls there, the straw walls, they're staked very far apart. I literally was able, with the tip of my toe, to just lift up whole sections of the erosion controls. They're very, very light. They're not going to stop anything the way they've been installed presently. Although it's difficult to see in the photograph, the erosion controls really have not been pulled far enough along on either side of the crossing. So, given the weather conditions now, and the fact that the work is actually started and done outside feels very concerned that there's no possibility of really stabilizing and restoring this year, and National Grid is proposing to take out the mats in the next week or two. I think that's a very undesirable situation from a wetlands point of view. After you make that crossing, the road goes out into open field, turns to the right, and Timber Road continues on for a considerable distance. You see the second picture, the one on the left, there's a pond, I don't know how it's classified under the Wetlands Protection Act, and you can't tell from the notes on the plan. It's delineated as a wetland on the plan, doesn't tell you what kind. But you see there the erosion control. The road is extremely close, probably 10 to 12 feet from the water. And again, the erosion control there, you can see those sections not staked. And it's not stopping. And then, if we could go to the next page. Then you're down several hundred feet to get to the next crossing of, and I presume this is BDW, it's delineated on the plans as wetlands. You can see the right condition of the road, the timbers. There are no erosion controls on either side of the timbers. Again, that section of the road's been down for several months, correct? Yeah. Yeah, and so whatever's underneath it, it ain't going to pop up and be happy. It's going to need a restoration, and certainly going to need stabilization over the months. So, from a wetlands perspective, those are the general concerns of the condominium association. There is one other issue, which is that the road, when it leaves the sewage treatment plant, underneath the road is a effluent pipe that takes the treated effluent to the leach field. And the equipment, the timber mats themselves are, I don't know how many they are, but the equipment that went over is very substantial. And we think, from the wetlands perspective, after the timbers are removed and the work completed, the National Grid tests the integrity of the effluent pipe. We don't have any reason to believe, other than what's been happening. We don't have any evidence that it's broken, but that should be checked when the work is complete. So that's where we are. I did as
a question in regards to that while it's fresh in my mind. So I've got the treatment plant. You're saying that, I don't know if it's a Schedule 40 or Schedule 80 pipe or whatever it is that carries the effluent out to the leaching field. You're worried about that being compromised by them driving over that.
They had some massive equipment coming in with those timbers.
I mean, but wouldn't they just put like steel plates out or something like that, Matt, to drive over to, kind of disperse the weight?
I don't know what the, again, I know National Grid is, the representatives from National Grid are here. Yes, okay, so they are here, so, I'd be better served.
What happened was they arrived with timbers unannounced and then began putting it down without doing anything with the road.
Could this guy speak to that for National Grid?
Yeah.
I mean, can you answer that question? You're sitting there.
I was waiting for the open comment because.
Okay, well, no, I mean, let's have some dialogue here. I mean, this is, you know, a question that he has, if you can, you know, tell us how you might mitigate
Come up to
that.
the mic
That's
and
one
let us
less
know who you
issue
are.
that we might have.
My name is Andrew Paul. I'm the lead environmental scientist for this project at National Grid. And I have Gary St. Fleur. Hi, good evening.
So Eric, your question?
Yeah, so in regards to the concerns raised about, you know, somehow impacting and compromising, you know, the pipe that's, you know, taking the effluent out of the wastewater treatment plant over the leaching field, I'm assuming that's gotta be buried at least 3 or 4 feet deep, because it's gotta be buried below the frost. So, but I'm assuming that you're gonna probably put some sort of plates or something out there to disperse weight, or the machines you're using aren't gonna impact it because these are buried at depth, or is there any way to, I hear what the gentleman is saying, I wanna hear what you're saying, or going to say that's gonna say, well, that's not an issue because of this.
Sure.
Or
Yeah.
how we're gonna operate.
Understood. And I didn't catch his name, but.
So Alex Parr.
Alex Fair. From what he was describing, again, there's no indication that there's actual damage to the pipes. The installation of the mats, to Paul's point, were installed using heavier equipment. They're brought in, they're laid down systematically and placed. The same would be done on the way out, and they could place additional matting that they're removing over this area to add protection to the pipes of, you know, the area of concern. The plan would be the borings are complete. The intent is to continue to conduct restoration. Areas where there's disturbance, they would smooth, they would seed straw. We conduct inspections with BSC Group, who did the notice of intent application before you. So they continue to do those inspections to ensure it's stable, and if there's any, you know, areas in jeopardy, we mobilize on foot to do restoration of those areas. So the mats are brought out in that manner. And as far as protection of the pipe, those mats could be placed so that it adds protection to the spots of concern. We didn't have a plan provided to us of the pipe until today that Paul provided what he had on, was able to dig up.
No, but I certainly understand the concern, so I wanted
Agreed.
to
Yep.
understand the mitigation efforts that would, you know, protect that, because the last thing you want to do is, you know, break that pipe and, you know, have there be an issue.
Agreed. Yep.
I could say, the work that's been done to date, putting in all these timbers and so on, there was no protection put down on the road whatsoever up to date. And the only protection was put down after the fact when I first got involved was over the culvert that drains the intimate stream. And at the beginning where there's another pipe that crosses the road where there was beginning to be a depth where there's a pipe going to the final.
So do you think that from work that's already been conducted, there's the potential that some of this piping has been impacted?
The likelihood is very low, but it's not zero, and that's the problem. And that's why we talked to our engineer, and we're trying to find an outfit that can inspect visually.
Yeah, put a camera through the pipe and
So
make
far,
sure it's not impacted.
they can only go 180 feet, so, which is not enough to get from the leach field, which is the end of the pipe, or from the pump house, the other end, to reach that section where the machinery was going over. So we're still looking at that, but that's something that we want to be sure of this, that at the termination of the project, that something like that is done.
So there's no indication of damage. I mean,
No, there's nothing
that's
there.
clear.
3 or 4 feet down.
Yep.
If it didn't get damaged and there is a leak, it's going to percolate down. It's probably not going to percolate up.
And so the access that was used was included in, I mean, the page that's reflected here doesn't necessarily show all the access that was represented in the notice of intent, but we did reflect that we intended to use this as an option. The pipe would be protected with mats. It's accessed with their activities to go to the leach field back and forth. The equipment that went in to do the soil borings themselves was smaller equipment. It's literally just the equipment that removes the mats. And they can place down steel plates, they can place down the same timber mats. There's a variety of mats that can be placed. But based on field conditions, and again, the photos that were shown, I think are a little bit misrepresentative. The erosion controls are on the outside. To his point, the staking probably could be added to add more protection, but those that are there is adjacent to the mats. So the mats are the primary BMP, then the wattles will be the secondary. And then as you leave those mats, there's disturbance, but it's along the road itself.
Now, how about as to like, council brings up the point that, you know, he goes out there and he believes that your straw wattle, you know, needs to be better secured to the ground because he could just stick his foot in there and lift it up, and, you know, if he can do that, then he feels it's not providing, you know, adequate protection. Is there any way that you can better adequately secure the wattles to the ground so they do act to provide the erosion control that they should?
Yes. Yep. So the same firm that I mentioned, again, BSC Group, you may be familiar with them. The environmental monitor that does the inspections would identify if they were inadequately installed or give an opinion of that, and our contractor adds stakes. So I'm not disputing the fact that they were installed to a standard. We have a BMP manual that they're supposed to follow. It's very possible that they didn't install appropriate number of stakes and or an additional BMP that could be placed alongside the mats. So yes.
So that was a question that you had.
Yeah,
But you had others too, you know.
sure, and I appreciate it.
Jim, are you on this topic as
On
well?
a related topic. Matt, before the project started, did you get called to inspect erosion control, anything like that?
We conducted a pre-construction meeting, but again, you know, where they're going, you know, the special condition, you know, I think in the order of conditions was, you know, I want to pull it up.
Probably, was it the standard, like greater than 2 weeks or less than 2 weeks?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think.
Have an on-site meeting.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it.
Anyway, I think there needs to be an inspection of the erosion control stuff and the crossing, the wooden planks that are put down for all that, to ensure that it's done correctly. And was this one of the efforts, one of the projects that is okay for work after December 1st?
This was not one of the
It
ones that we had
wasn't. It was not.
discussed at the last meeting.
I looked in the
How are you guys going to stabilize this now until April?
The plan is to remove the BMP, the mats.
Now?
Yes, yep, as they are a BMP, industry standard for protection of wetlands. We remove the mats. On the way out, crews would apply straw. Going back up, there would be stabilization done, meaning if there are ruts, it would be smooth.
Just from the pictures, I mean, if those are up from that site, it's clear there's a lot of rutting.
Yeah, running within the road in the uplands. Yep, correct. The matting is over in the wetlands. So the mats are removed. There's no grubbing under those mats. They're used to disperse the weight. That's the intent.
Spread out.
Yep. So we don't anticipate there to be need of restoration directly in the wetlands, meaning, you know, BBW. The areas that are uplands would be smooth, seeded, strawed. In the egress and entrance and exit of the wetlands, and erosion control could be added if there's a concern of a slope. So those kinds of restoration
National Grid will have to
efforts.
put it in writing what they're planning on doing, or what they want to do between December 1st and April 1st. And all the things you just mentioned, to back out of the site and stabilize what's rutted and.
So why don't they do like I mean, Matt can't be out there and inspecting everything
Right.
every time
Yeah.
they do something.
They have to
But these
verify.
guys could provide photo documentation and show us and say, hey, you know, we're being called out on this is what we did.
Right, but they gotta put it in writing what they're planning on doing. All the things he just mentioned in a sequence, what they're gonna do and how quickly they're gonna be able to do it.
We would,
Since
if
you're
you
already
want
not
that
supposed
from
to.
anybody else who worked between December 1st
Right,
and
because you're
April
already not
1st.
supposed to be
Be
working
here,
on the
yeah.
site.
Well, if I may, I don't know what the hurry is now. They've done their boring to back out of the site. I mean, it's not that.
Unless they're done, they're gonna be.
No, but, well, they're done on their borings, but as the gentleman indicated, you know, they got the mats down and they're performing a function of stabilization. Why take them out before April 1st? Why not just leave them and do this work after April 1st, where the conditions are going to be more favorable? Stabilization and restoration where needed. That would be my suggestion. I did prepare a sort of a wish list.
Could I respond to that?
Provide that to us?
Yes, and I was going to provide it to the gentleman as well.
And wouldn't hurt to have a
Thank you. Can I just respond to that?
Yeah.
So the December 1st, April 1st, I did provide Matt a high level reply to kind of what our activities would be. I can expand upon that. In addition, I can also provide the weekly reports that are done by BSC Group, which would be the documentation of activities. And we'd be happy to do a site walk with Hildreth Hills during the restoration work. So, I mean, it's not that we're neglecting or trying to get out of restoration work. The mats being left in there till April, you know, there's a couple things. One, there's a cost implication, so that's a primary focus of mine. As far as the protection to the wetlands, the mats themselves are going to cause damage to the wetland kind of if we leave them in place into the spring. What I mean by that is by leaving them there and then going in the spring, it's kind of counterintuitive when things would be revegetating and they're left there with freeze and thaw, so it could be causing additional damage. So I guess my response to that is by removing them now, doing the smoothing, the seeding, we're adding to the seed and the seed base and the straw, it's going to revegetate. So waiting till the spring, it's going to be even more messy, cause more damage.
So your BMP with regard to the timber mats is you put them in place and leave them in place for the minimum amount of time they're needed?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And the only reason so one thing I think is important not to lose track of is the reason these mats stayed in here as long as they have is because we originally came in with a notice of intent, we were approved. We did supply a modification, we're approved to move soil borings out of the wetland with the intent to present and improve our infrastructure. National Grid aims to reduce impacts, and we're going to try to remove those structures in the massive wetland by moving them further to the edges or outside of. So the mats are in here longer than intended. I think that's kind of important to express. It wasn't our intent to be in here during the soft period of the, as we get into the freeze thaw here into the winter. So I have to apologize for that, but it was just the nature of getting the approvals and then coming back to do these additional borings. But I guess that's kind of how I would respond, that we'd be happy to provide the weekly inspection reports from BSC Group, have a site walk with them, add additional BMPs over the area of concern of the pipe, do the restoration, come back in the spring, review it with Matt, with Hildreth Hills. I feel like that's really the best interest of the wetlands in the area and the area in general. If we wait till April, my personal opinion, professional as well, it's going to turn into more mud and more damage to the area. So.
Yes. What's the plan with checking the effluent pipe here?
I don't have I'm not providing an intent to check that.
I think that's something that the trustees are.
And Hildreth Hills wants, and I'm thinking National Grid thinks it's probably not necessary.
But that's something that the trustees are taking on for their own peace of mind.
Although they spell out here that they
want
think
them
they
to-
like National Grid to take on that responsibility.
Okay.
To pay for it?
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
I just had one comment on, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
I'm not going to remember yours either. I'll do it. I'm Andrew.
Andrew and Alex.
All right, I'll write that down.
The gentleman.
There you go.
Costs should not be driving decisions.
No, and I heard that as well. But I did hear him say that, wanting to work in the time that they're working in the winter, felt it would be better to do the work in the winter because it would have less impact on the resource areas and the buffer. That's what I'm hearing.
I heard him say that.
And you're like, and I'm thinking you're saying, well, you have a difference of opinion.
Well, look, he's a scientist, I'm a lawyer.
No, I totally. I'm doing this flying down here off the town.
I just want to add one more detail. I guess in addition to that, going into April, it's going to be the spring, right? And we've seen the disturbance, I think, that you're concerned about with the mats being installed, being removed. It's just going to be the same type of activity causing damage there. So I think we're just pushing this down the road to the spring, more damage to
Except
the
you're
areas.
gonna take the mats from the furthest part
And place them over, yep.
all the way
It'll be
back.
better erosion controls and.
Yep, but it's gonna be,
You're gonna roll them back.
yeah, the intent is to put the mats from furthest point out over the section directly over where the pipe is.
Right.
That's the only remobilization of mats, if you will, in that section. Then we continue to move those areas out.
So, I mean, my suggestion at this point, it's obviously the commission's decision, but my suggestion. I'm sorry.
No, it's really for the microphone.
Okay, I'll try and speak loud.
Just for once.
It's for teacher and me, just put it out there.
Thank you. My suggestion at this point is obviously, the commission's decision, but I think if BSC is an environmental monitor on the project, submits a plan for going forward for review and approval by the commission, there might be opportunity to see it, and if we want it reviewed by wetland scientists on our own behalf, then do we go in that way? This is.
I got no problem with that. I mean, if we're getting something, why can't they look at it?
Part of the public record.
I guess one of the questions would be is if that review cycle slows the work down enough. It just, I think we've got trade-offs there in terms of.
The cost.
No, I'm not.
No, they're providing their costs, it's more just time and.
I'm just thinking is if part of it is, once those timber mats are no longer required there, it's beneficial to get them out as quickly as possible. Do we really want the process to delay removing them because of all the reviews we're doing?
Nope, we want to get that stuff.
And
No,
Eric?
I think we want to get them out ASAP.
Right, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, the overview that I gave Matt did express the intent is to do this right away.
What we have in writing right now, Matt, is that sufficient to request for work between December and April?
Let me just take a look. I put in there that I felt, after talking to the contractor, that we would have the mats in that area removed by the second week of January. That didn't, pending weather, and I tried to take into account holidays, so.
And did you want to add any of these things to that list, which I haven't seen?
I'm not prepared to add it right this second. Let me read them. It's first I'm seeing.
You're not asking for anything special or formal, use the back side of this, or you want to write it right here?
If I could just talk to, in general, from the Board of Trustees' perspective here. And some of it's conservation related, some of it's just the overall experience that we've had with National Grid that I think you need to be aware of. That National Grid showed up unannounced. They piled up these timber mats on top of structures that is higher than the ceiling. And they thought the contractors, the only people I ever talked to, and they thought this was a storage unit.
Well, there's got to be an easement or something on your property that they use, right? I don't know what the terms of that
I
easement
have
are.
some information I can give you on
But
that.
well, that's not, we're not going to get involved in the easement, that's.
I know. I think when it comes to future, because they're talking about coming back in 2025.
To do back in April.
Well, no, you're talking about another project.
To put in the towers.
The towers.
And we don't want them accessing and using our wastewater treatment plant as a staging area for their trucks and their cars and all that. The experience has been no communication whatsoever, no response.
That doesn't sound great, but that's the guy you're going to talk to right there.
Yeah, I plan to have continued.
When you do a notice of intent for the future for 2025, we'd like to be aware of the experience that we've had and take that into consideration. And at that point, by then, we will have litigated.
But you have the right to come in to our meetings and any issues that you might have in regards.
Will, if we were notified,
You
and
get notices too.
we get
You receive
notices.
notices.
We received notices and everybody.
We send them.
I can get
We
the
received
green cards.
notices, everybody signed off of it, and the notice said nothing about access by our wastewater treatment plant. Nothing. We could then have.
The access issue was an our issue.
Right, that's the easement. That's the easement
But
between
we had an
the
opportunity to
property.
challenge it. If we had the opportunity to challenge it, at that point, we would have. But we didn't know. And
But that's not us.
Right.
But you know now.
That's an easement issue between, an easement that exists and you felt that you didn't get proper notification that they were going to use that easement.
I don't know what.
But
the
I don't know if
easement
that's
says.
in our
It says they have to
jurisdiction.
let you know a week ahead of time, a month ahead of time, or no notice, so they can use it anytime. I don't know what the easement says, but that's between the two property owners. That's not us. We don't say, use this line or use that road.
Then if you could at least say to them in the future, have you talked to Hildreth Hills? Have you communicated what you're going to do with Hildreth Hills? That would be very helpful to us.
Yeah, and Paul, I'm hearing you. I've also communicated to the project team that this issue, that I was going to come here tonight. The intent is to have meetings with you one-on-one, look at this access, what the plans would be.
First contact I had was 2 weeks ago. First contact.
So it
Was that
sounds like there's been a
subcontractor that does
communication issue that
community
needs to be
relations.
addressed. Sounds like he's saying that they're going to try to do a better job at communicating with you.
And we hope so, yes.
Yeah,
Do they know who they need to reach out to?
We do now.
And that's
Yeah, but if
And
they
they did
don't,
then.
I mean, yeah,
Yes,
make
they
sure
did.
those lines of communication, it's like, yeah, you're supposed to call me, here's my number, this is how you get
That
me.
happened in July, and August 1st, that happened. And there was no communication from August 3rd to November between Gary or Jordan.
Andrew.
Jordan in particular, and our property management company. It just dropped. So yes, there's a relationship issue, we have to deal with that, and we will. But you need to know that when you're dealing with
Remind us
National
if you see
Grid,
it on
to
the-
be, be concerned about, how they're doing things.
It sounds like they're willing to do that, so.
No, but I hear the gentleman here too. You know, it sounds good here, but will it happen? You know,
It's up to
so-
them.
But this is also, when you get those notices that there's a public hearing, that's your opportunity to come, ask questions, ask for communication as well.
To advise
That's where
us,
you can
remind
learn
us.
about the project. There's also a lot of, when you start talking about the easement and stuff like that, there are things in the filing, or there may be things that are part of their process that are outside of our jurisdiction because they're happening on property that's not under our jurisdiction. So it's really good if somebody comes to the public hearings because you can become informed, you can ask questions, you can ask for the communication, and that's another way to kind of avoid the situation that we find ourselves in now. So, it's,
We would have, I think, I agree with you 100%. However, we could have come to that and never, ever known that there was a process that was going to impact our wastewater treatment plant.
well, and now you don't.
They notified us on day 1 and day 3, they started moving in timbers.
Okay, and a lot of this is where we also get into a lot of, when things don't go as smoothly as we'd like, there are lessons learned that we use the next time. And it just, there's a lot of stuff that we do because we've found that there could be better communication, there could be better planning, and so the next time around, we do that. And, we welcome the public here in these meetings to ask questions, to be informed about what's happened. You've got a lot of experience now that the next time there's a project, you'll have questions to ask, and we welcome them.
Count on it. Thank you.
So, come back to the wetlands
Yeah.
for a moment. If the commission is going to permit the removal of the mats to proceed, I respectfully ask that there be a specific plan provided for the erosion controls and for the stabilization and restoration of the impacted areas. So that can be reviewed.
We heard verbally, but do they have it in some sort of?
Is that something with which BSC Group,
Could provide.
is that something BSC Group, as acting as the environmental monitor will be, providing back, as the timber matting is being removed, them identifying the areas with which, restoration needs to occur and, that being provided back to us. I mean,
Restoration that did occur after they removed it.
right, I mean, because I mean, kind of to the point, going back to, this area right here, yes, the timber matting, there should be minimal disturbance besides just, the weight of the timber matting, where they are. there shouldn't be much actual restoration of, this area in here, I don't know, photo
Just gotta
documentation.
grade it out.
Right, and seed it, and, and I think in one of Andrew's emails to me, yes, he describes BSC, they initially do the restoration work, between the seed and the strawing, and then following up, in the, following it out so that it actually does take, it's not worthwhile if it's not, ultimately, it doesn't get vegetated. I don't think now is the ideal time for the seeds to be taking, but, it's a point to follow back on, come the spring when they do their monitoring in April, this is now a desirable time to. And, I don't.
Or whatever, yeah.
Right, to reseed, but I don't know if, I'm not 100% sure the straw wattles, maybe straw
You know
wattles.
what's trying to be achieved. Let BSC tell us how
Right,
they
as
would
the environmental
achieve
monitor.
the goal. As opposed to us trying to design it for them and telling them what to do. They're the engineering consultant.
They're gonna have a plan that tells how they're gonna demobilize the site and stabilize it for the winter. That's what they need to get to us, and we'll share it with you. We're not gonna wait. We're gonna get it, we'll get it to you, and we're gonna get them moving on it quickly. So as soon as you can have any kind of review, whatever you wanna do it fast.
Andrew?
Yeah, could I offer up a summary of that tomorrow in an email? I would also agree to, or be happy to have BSC group there with the contractor as they're removing mats, being visually there to say, we need to do X, Y, and Z, but the contractor will be doing installation of controls if there's a slope. They're gonna seed, we're also relying on the native seed base, right? But they're going to seed, they're gonna straw over that, and then the mats will be removed sequentially out. So summary tomorrow with those details, BSC being involved, and then it would be BSC on the ground with the contractor as they're removing them and giving you real-time updates. Either, my preference would be every other day, so it's not too redundant,
Yeah,
because it's
I
not
think
a
every other
huge
day.
area.
Yeah.
If you're agreeable, even at the end of the week, or even a phone call, check in, but as much communication as you think is necessary. and
email every
is
other day
comfortable.
I think would be good, just so.
The email plan tomorrow is good too?
Yeah, I think that works, as kind of the, roadmap of, what's to be what's to be expected.
We'll share
what to be.
details right away.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's going to include kind of the schedule that was in that one email, the plans for restoration, BSC contact, and who would be there kind of as a full-time monitor. That's what I intend to provide.
Sounds good.
Ask one additional thing, in terms of protecting the wetlands from any problems with the pipe that goes under the wetlands, would it be worthwhile for you to stipulate to them that come spring or whenever, that they do a camera or visual inspection of the pipe between the leach field and the area that they went over with their trucks?
Is that the easement issue again?
No, it's not the easement, it's the pipe.
He's worried about them crushing the pipe.
I know.
Or just
Something, he's worried
compromising
about
the
something
pipe
that
in some
doesn't
way.
show.
In other words, should they be required as part of the restoration to verify that there is?
I feel like
ask that.
We don't have the right to ask that.
I feel like it would ultimately, if we did go about that, it would be through an enforcement order, and I haven't seen anything with which proves to me that there has been damage. I'm just hesitant about that, I feel.
They cause problems in an easement between you two.
No, it's not an easement.
No, but it's,
It's
they damage the pipes, at which point the pipes are now,
In the wetlands.
right, and that's, but I can't, I need, I need to,
Observed or
I need to-
monitored or seen, yeah.
yeah, I
All the
just.
pipes that
hesitant.
have been tracked over are in the wetlands. So, but it's your call then.
I just got the plans from you today, Paul, as far as the location of it.
Well, but we were told from the beginning where things were, so. We'll talk.
Yeah, not on record, but continuing the conversation is my intent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna let them work that one out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Do members of the commission have any other questions? Matt?
I have
Okay.
Members of the public.
Members of the audience have any?
Yeah, I'd like.
Okay.
Just come
So if you
identify
come up
yourself.
and come up to the microphone, identify yourself and
I'm Dan Towers, and I am on the trustee in Hildred Hills, and I just thought it'd be appropriate for you to ask National Grid when the project started and when those wattles were put down.
I guess they would put, I'm not sure when they started, I guess if they're working in an area and they put down those timbers, I'm assuming they were putting those straw wattles out at the same time they're doing the activity.
It'd be nice to assume that, but the wattles are down there in the last week and a half. So it's just my confidence in BSC, if they were responsible in the past and failed to do their job then, what kind of confidence do I have that they'll do a good job in the future? Simple as that.
I don't have the timeline on my, on hand. The plans that were reflected show that the access is in uplands, in buffer zone. The contractor utilizes the access and then implements BMPs as conditions get worse. Albeit here it got worse and they added additional matting and then the wattle was added. So it's not wattle the entire thing and mat the entire thing unless it's caught on the plans. So, again, to the conversation that we were having for the future project, there would be further conversation to improve kind of what the access is outlined here. But no, the wattles didn't go down immediately adjacent to the mats.
Wouldn't our order of conditions have had that?
It would have been, I know that I think this actually, the special condition referred to, BMPs shall be installed as necessary, consistent with, I think you remember the last, 20 pages of the notice of intent was, any and every, potential BMP, whether it was, box turtle, the box turtle kind of offset straw wattles, the timber matting, there was, any and every, potential BMP, and that was, to be installed as necessary. Looking at, the photo on the left, I don't see, I'm not 100% sure what the straw wattle's doing. It doesn't look like there's any disturbance off of the timber matting. The timber matting, is a BMP in and of itself.
No dirt, no soil or anything that you're worried about that the straw wattle's going to provide protection for.
Right,
But still, typically,
But when the timber mat comes up, that's a different story.
Yep.
That's the point.
And the wattle would be retained, and then we can remove it by hand, cutting it, and we would spread the straw. All material monofilament would be removed, that would come out, the straw would be spread.
But I'm thinking the gentleman here, the council, is saying that, when you're taking this timber matting out, these wattles should be staked in place so they could provide the adequate,
Right,
erosion control
if
they're
they're
supposed
there,
to be.
if they are out there, make sure that they're installed to the standard with which, again, back to that BMP.
Not the first time I've seen erosion controls, maybe not as put in place to the standard that we'd like to see, but I think we're saying that we want to make sure they're beefed up a little bit.
Right, and to the standard with which, I'm sure in the, the pages at the end of the NOI, I'm sure that's specified, 4 or 5 feet on center, that's,
In short, we would say tighten it up.
Yeah, do it to the plan. That's.
Yeah, it's a conversation with the contractor that, at least in these photos, does not comply with the environmental guidance document 303 that was attached to the NOI. So yes, these wattles do not appear to be installed correctly. That's a conversation I'll have with the contractor tomorrow.
Which council noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Do you have more for us or anyone from the audience? We're not closing you out. We're just thanking you for bringing the comment.
Yeah, come up to the microphone and tell us who you are, please.
My name is Judy Corbett. I don't know if this is going to help me. There, okay. My name is Judy Corbett, and I'm on the Board of Trustees at Hildreth Hills. We also have Hildreth Heights Board of Trustees represented, so we are about 170 units. One of our concerns we've talked about a whole lot, and that's restoration of the wetlands. But the second concern is the pipes. The effluent pipes coming out of the wastewater treatment plant, which are in the wetlands, and the leaching field. And when National Grid and its subcontractors first came on site, they used our wastewater treatment plant exactly where the pipes were as a staging area. They put a mountain of timbers taller than this ceiling, and the hugest equipment you've ever seen over our pipes. There were no mats, there were no protection. We are willing to work with them with the easement. We really don't have a problem with the easement. It's not an easement issue. It's the fact that we want them to work in a reasonable and diligent manner when they use the easement, and they have not done that at all. The things that you're seeing for wetlands protection are very, very recent. This has been going on since July. And so if this board doesn't have the jurisdiction to help us make sure that our wastewater treatment plant pipes are okay, where do we go from here? What town board do we deal with?
No,
Because
you-
that's a
you go with
critical
them.
issue.
I mean, you basically, I know what you're saying, and their layout area and where they put that, and it's not, so if you believe they impacted it, then I guess, you know, you have to, your recourse is with them, it's not with another town board.
It isn't with a planning board or anything like that?
I wouldn't direct, so I would, advise counsel, he is here. I would speak with your counsel and direct.
All right, and if our wastewater is in the wetlands, that's not an issue that you deal with?
No, it is, if there is.
And then we would have an enforcement order to have you fix it ASAP. But if it was caused by.
Meaning us, you?
I mean, I don't want to go down,
But it's not ours, who affects,
All right, but there is an enforcement
There can
process?
There is. Yes.
When there's evidence of damage.
If you were saying that you had effluent leaking into the wetlands, yeah, we bring an enforcement order and say, yeah, this needs to be remedied.
Right.
But until there's that factual information, it's the factual information that there's damage, there's effluent in the wetlands. Factual information like that is the trigger for then following an enforcement order process to get it corrected.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
So, I have a question. Sure.
Up, microphone, please.
Hi, Jack Mankin, with Heights. So, I would think that the conversation about the septic line there on the easement property would be addressed as part of the construction that's going on before it even started. So I'm kind of surprised to understand why that isn't discussed as part of the project. And I'm new to this, I'm not sure if it was or wasn't, but there should have been some rules or regs or enforcement or something to make sure that what happened was not allowed to happen because of the impact of the pipe that was going there.
We don't know if there was any impact to the pipe by the activity that took
No,
place.
it's not a matter of you
I think-
knowing or not knowing, it's a matter of, as part of the project.
During the public hearing, when there was talk about where the access would be, was
There was
it
no
known
mention
that
of
the
the pipe.
pipe actually existed?
Correct.
And were there plans available to the applicant to tell them where there were pipes to be concerned about? And I guess, 20/20 hindsight, that was probably information that was missing, that was not available to anybody at the time.
So would this body though, or is it another body in town that would know where that pipe is and know that that needs to be part of the conversation on this project?
Board of Health?
Would probably have wastewater treatment plant plans.
Actually, if it's a treatment plan, it's DEP.
Oh, it's DEP.
That's the Board of Health and Health Department, it's above them.
So
it's DEP has the.
would that information have been available to the applicant proposing the project?
Yes. I don't.
Okay, so I guess it's a very good question. It's probably something to keep in mind in the future if we're seeing projects in the vicinity of a wastewater treatment plant. The question of, do access roads potentially, do we need to look for
Piping and other infrastructure
Yes.
that may somehow, if
Need to be
damaged,
taken-
negatively impact or
Yeah.
adversely impact.
And discussions about what can and can't be done on top of that property where those pipes are. And
It's activity to occur.
Yeah, it just, yeah.
170 homes that are being impacted.
And it sounds like this is a first time that we've seen this situation in what, Eric, your 29 years?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we wouldn't allow this pipe where it is.
Right.
Okay.
They said no pipes through the wetlands.
We can follow these pipes 100 feet outside the
That was my
wetland,
reaction.
It's running right through it. Well, that's absolutely contrary to what we,
But even more reason
to our
for
interest.
that to be part of the discussion process at the
Yeah.
beginning.
So, okay.
So we wouldn't be going and looking for a pipe that's in the wetland because we don't allow them.
Right.
Okay. So anyway,
I just wanted to
Yes.
bring this up because it is an important aspect of this whole project.
and
that should be part of the conversations at the beginning.
well, and this will be questions that we ask in the future when there's a wastewater treatment. It's a situation we've never seen before, questions we never thought to ask.
Right.
We think to ask it on a home, on a, single family lot, a Callista, we wanted to make.
Exactly.
Right, we
The
wanted
one
to know
that
that,
just-
and,
yeah.
It's something that,
Yeah, and it just,
we didn't know we needed to ask that question.
And
Rather
if
than
there
ruin?
are conditions with regard to buried infrastructure like this effluent pipe, it wouldn't be a bad idea to add something like that to the written easement. So anybody that looks it up can find out exactly where there might be things to avoid,
Exactly.
where manhole accesses are, if there are any, all those kind of things would be a good idea to have. Up until then, nobody knew what was where. Nobody knew where the pipe was, that there even was one under there.
I'm just bringing that to make sure going forward that that's part of your
They
discussion.
did know prior to the beginning of the project, so you're aware of that. They didn't.
Who did?
Who-
National Grid knew there were pipes under that road at the beginning, when they first announced it. Our property manager told Jordan Red that.
We weren't
Okay.
there.
But again, that's between,
Like I said, that's part of it. If you want to add detail to the
Just
easement
want to make
about
sure
what-
you understand the
Oh,
reality.
I don't understand it, but that's between you guys.
yeah, but I think it's also, that's an example of when it's very helpful for us to have the public be here
Yeah,
as
that
part of
audience
the public hearing
participation.
to add that information that
Going forward.
that we didn't know, potentially, it's, that's where the public participation and the public hearings helps us to get ahead of these and avoid these kinds of issues. Because sometimes you know stuff that nobody else knows.
other questions from the
Any other
audience?
questions? Okay. Thank you all for coming and participating.
Educating us.
Educating us, and thank you to National Grid as well for being here for the discussion and for all the actions that you've taken.
And are going
And
to.
we know what we're going to get going forward.
Yes. I don't think we need to take any votes.
No, take any votes.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
So we're gonna talk from you guys?
So,
If you can just, Andrew, if you can close the doors after
There's a
everybody
little
leaves.
conference
'cause-
room right outside on the left-hand side.
Yeah, they're not in there.
I mean, the conference room.
yep, okay. So, moving on to our next agenda item, it's public hearing continued for 73 Brookside.
The applicant has requested a continuance to the January 25th meeting as they are making plan revisions based upon DEP comments, planning board comments, and zoning board of appeals. The engineering department is performing a review of the stormwater calculations.
Okay.
And if we can,
So can I have a motion to continue the public hearing to
January 25th.
25th, 2020?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. On to the discussion and action items. One Fellows Lane, ratify emergency certificate for well replacement.
yes, I had, this was back beginning of the month, a resident in Skilling's Wells reached out, the resident at One Fellows Lane did not have a working well. It was in the basement, which was a new one for me. Things you don't know you need to put on the bingo card. So they were proposing to locate it, and, you know, with this being a waterfront property on Forge Pond, all the septic is as far away from the lake as possible, which means the well has to be almost in the lake. I think they
I had a well in the basement, so I know what that's like.
So they're proposing close to, it was proposed close to the edge of the lake. And I included conditions requiring that. Minimize disturbance near the wetland resource, silt fence and hay bales installed down gradient of the drill location to prevent any excavation into the wetland, any of the excavated materials into the wetland, and that they shall locate the well as far as way as practical from the water body and property line. And lastly, in accordance with the town of Westford's non-zoning bylaw, within 21 days of the commencement of the emergency project, permit application shall be required as an after-the-fact filing with the well location shown on the plan. In speaking with the homeowner, he's looking to file, he was starting to have a plan prepared. He's proposing a garage on the property, again, right at the edge of the 100-foot wetland buffer. And so I was amenable, you know, in a timely fashion, you know, to file both, you know, no need to come before the commission and pay the legal ad twice. So I will keep on top of him if I haven't, you know, seen anything by, you know, the end of January, you know, mid-January.
Happy
I'm
fellows.
saying outside
No.
the 100 or inside? I didn't hear.
The garage is proposed at the edge of, you know, 10 feet into the 100-foot buffer,
Okay.
so he'll be coming before the commission.
Okay.
Or is anticipated to come before the commission, and if, you know, that plan gets scrapped, I'm still going to look for a after-the-fact RDA approving the location. But if the commission.
So a motion to ratify the emergency certificate?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is that something to sign for us?
I
Okay.
signed it, it's out.
Okay. The agricultural land review and approval of the updated MOU.
I have nothing to report.
Okay.
We had a draft.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
they-
yeah.
that had
You had-
updated
They were
the-
going to form a subcommittee to review it and any questions or concerns, and that was not
Didn't happen.
executed.
There's somebody who's still looking for members.
Yeah, we almost didn't have it. They almost didn't have a quorum.
Okay.
This time. This past, it was last night. They had
Yes.
a meeting. Yeah.
I still get the meeting notices, just so that I know when it's meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if they're not, you haven't had a chance to discuss?
No, they
They're
haven't
good.
had a chance to discuss among themselves.
Oh, okay. So we need to continue.
Well, this is just, he's got in here just like the sycamore cypress planting, so it doesn't
Which
get
won't be on
forgotten.
there for Jim Hellerman.
Yeah. Okay, so we're still waiting on them. You know, if they think it would be helpful for that subcommittee to come back and we can have a joint session, that may be easier than them talking amongst themselves and then somebody carrying a message.
I think the only issue they're having is with the fencing, that part of it.
They have they themselves have an issue with the
Leaving it
agricultural
open?
commission.
Leaving it up, yeah, or like where
The agricultural commission has an issue with the community garden leaving up the fencing.
they have a lot of,
Okay.
yeah.
There's confusion.
There's
and
confusion of where to put the openings.
It may
and-
get resolved, it may not get
Yeah.
resolved. You know,
Okay.
we may go back to the old MOU. Who knows?
Okay. So,
Next week.
yeah, so and I think,
I'll
Yeah, if-
email and try to.
Yeah.
We'll keep it on for a future discussion on it.
yeah, and if they want to come and have kind of a more focused discussion with us, I think we're amenable to that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Robbins Road?
The project lead for the One Robbins Road project reached out this afternoon. They have updated their schedule. They're seeking approval to work through February 3rd. They previously were on the November 30th agenda,
Yeah.
which we approved. I think they just kind of reevaluated some of the construction going on outside the buffer and wanted to do that work prior to, having, new force main in, and kind of the timing of all the pieces. I mean, there are the site work within the 100-foot buffer on their plan includes the demolition of the existing water line, pouring the concrete and backfilling the new water line, excavating for the force main, installing the force main, and then the actual trench and grade, and then any additional kind of cleanup in the 100-foot buffer. And again, all of the proposed work is within a paved area of the parking lot. So, I'm comfortable with that. And they've been good at keeping their erosion controls up to date. So, through February 3rd.
Are you looking for a motion to that
Motion?
effect? So
Yeah.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Have people had a chance to review the minutes for the November 30th meeting? Okay.
My name is misspelled once.
Huh? Your name was misspelled?
Once, just once. The rest of them.
Okay. I did have one adjustment. It is the benthic mat project. I had requested that the minutes have an additional sentence that the commission was provided the report including details about the materials used, installation/removal activities, and end-of-season observations, which was specified in the approval of the project. Just to record that, we asked for the report and that we got it, because I think, that's a key part of a pilot. So I just, the person doing the minutes was being concise, and I just wanted one more detail in there.
Yeah, I think.
So, if there are no other comments, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So, if there's no other business, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.